Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a village by a forest. Whenever she went out, she wore a red hooded cape. Everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother baked some cakes, and she asked Little Red Riding Hood to take them to her grandmother, who lived in the forest. Little Red Riding Hood was very excited and happy to go visit her grandmother. Her mother packed up the cakes in a basket and reminded Little Red Riding Hood to not waste time and go straight to her grandmother's house and to not talk to strangers. Along the path to her grandmother's house, there were flowers, ponds, and woodland animals along the way. And Little Red Riding Hood took her time and enjoyed them all. Then, all of a sudden, a wolf was beside her, asking, "Well, Little Red Riding Hood, what are you doing here?" She told him she was on her way to visit her grandmother's house in the forest. The wolf wanted to gobble up Little Red Riding Hood, but he noticed a woodcutter coming along. So the wolf thought of a plan. "Well, where does your grandmother live?" the wolf asked. Little Red Riding Hood answered, "She lives over the bridge and past the lake," she told the wolf. "Let's play a game and race to your grandmother's house to see who can get there first," said the wolf. "Okay," said Little Red Riding Hood as she ran towards her grandmother's house as fast as she could. The wolf knew a secret path that was far quicker and ran towards her grandmother's house to beat Little Red Riding Hood in the race. The wolf knocked on the grandmother's door, and she asked, "Is that you, Little Red Riding Hood?" The wolf was able to disguise his voice very well, and he replied, "Yes, grandmother, it is me." "Oh, come in, my dear Little Red Riding Hood," said grandmother. To her surprise, the big bad wolf ran in and gobbled her up. The wolf then dressed up to disguise himself as the grandmother. He put on her nightcoat and nightcap and jumped in her bed. Very soon after, Little Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. The wolf disguised his voice again and asked, "Who is it?" "It's me," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Oh, do come in, dear," crackled the wolf. When Little Red Riding Hood saw her grandmother, she barely recognized her and thought her voice sounded strange. As Little Red Riding Hood got closer, she noticed her grandmother's ears were so big and asked, "Grandmother, what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with, my dear," croaked the wolf. "But, grandmother, what big eyes you have." "All the better to see you with, my sweet girl," replied her grandmother, who was really the wolf. "But, grandmother, what big teeth you have," said Little Red Riding Hood, feeling very scared. "All the better to eat you with," roared the wolf as he leapt from the bed towards Little Red Riding Hood. She ran towards the door as fast as she could. And now she could fully see that it was not her grandmother, but the big bad wolf. As she was trying to escape, she yelled, "Help!" in her loudest voice. "Help!" Cutter, who was working in the forest, heard Little Red Riding Hood's cries for help and ran to help her. He caught the big bad wolf and shook him so hard that grandmother came out all in one piece. Little Red Riding Hood hugged her grandmother and apologized for talking to strangers and wasting time. Her grandmother said, "Don't worry, dear. You have learned some important lessons. Now why don't we enjoy those delicious cakes you brought me?" The woodcutter took the big bad wolf deep into the forest, so he could never bother Little Red Riding Hood or her family ever again. The end.